So I want to tell you a little bit about what was included in the training based on the learning objectives that we were working towards. The number of people that we were training here were 260 team leaders and 70 group leaders, so a reasonable quantity of leaders in an organisation of 3,500 of total. So 3 days, 3-day course. We had trainer input on the process, so we needed people to fully understand the process, but this was more of a change intervention than a teaching of the process. So the way in which that was facilitated, I think, was central to what we achieved from this programme. We've got senior, very intelligent, technically brilliant people who do not like to be told. So first of all, my challenge is that trainer is telling them about the process. So my biggest key thing I took away from this was that I needed to present the options around what we needed to do and then engage in discussion at key points throughout, sharing with people that process. Now, how we engaged in that discussion was central to the change that we achieved. So giving people that time to vent. I know this is a classic around change management, but I think sometimes we miss integrating it into training. So actually giving that discussion space for that was absolutely key. Then second was the group exercises. So we've heard already today about different group exercises. I know this is something we often include in training. I think that's important. But we made sure that in the group exercises we were asking people to present back and vocalise those key messages. So they were already getting into the practice of using that language of ownership and saying those things that we wanted them to be going out there and saying in the workplace. So we've had the discussion and we're having them feed back to us those things. Sometimes they did that. It didn't always work. I'd like to say 100% of the time we got the language we wanted, but that didn't always work. Another key part of it was skills practice. So we heard from Andrew about all different types of models and ways in which we can encourage those behaviours we want to see around leadership. We wanted to make sure that these became so meaningful for people that they were completely clear about what they needed to do day to day when they walked out of the training, so that they had experience of doing that. So we made sure with any skills practice it was light on the theory and heavy on the practice and feedback. And we found that for that to work, it was crucial to make sure we'd set up an environment right from the start where people felt safe and secure, where they didn't feel they were taking a risk if they were voicing their genuine concerns. Okay, so that was a key part of it. The type of things that we covered, we drew on various different things. So we looked at some things around transaction analysis, which you might be familiar with, which is particularly useful if you have a lot of people behaving like a critical parent and they're getting lots of tantruming children, which was classic around the performance management process. So we looked at that, looked at some of the behaviours and attitudes that we could change around that. We used some things from NLP, so things around perceptual positioning. So something that you had Gandhi up on the screen here before, who was very, very, very in favour of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes as a means of influencing. So we used some techniques around that, which we found very, very useful. There was a little bit of resistance from our mainly male, technically brilliant leaders and managers when we talked about things like that. So we had to be careful about how we explained those things. And of course we looked at coaching and coaching skills for performance. And I'd say across all of the training, in terms of the skills, if we could get people to really ask open questions and really understand the value of open questions and that part of coaching, then that was one of the key things. Finally, the third part of the course, so the third day, which is the part that I think is slightly different to something you might always come across in leadership and management training, was that we ran sessions in partnership with actors using a combination of role play or real play and action learning sets. So people prepared, before they came along, a real scenario, a real challenge that they were encountering, and they then brief the actor on what that particular situation was. Now, they did this only in small groups, so we were not assessing anybody, testing anybody, or getting anybody to do a performance, so we're keeping that security there up during the discussion. And then they got an opportunity to try out some of the theory we've been talking about. You know, we can always talk about management, leadership, and use all of the jargon, can't we, till we're blue in the face. It's when you actually try and put it into action that the real challenge and the real learning happens, and that's what we were trying to do with this particular activity. And we tended to get feedback that that was, for many people, the most valuable part of the day. It also meant that within the groups, we were facilitating this as a type of action learning set. People were learning how to learn in this way. So afterwards, the leaders would often go and get together when they had a challenging scenario and go and use this as a format to practice themselves, to have a dry run on a performance management challenge before they actually went and did it themselves. So that helped with carrying things forward. And of course, at the end, we made sure there was time for personal reflection and peer coaching. To make sure this extended beyond the workplace.
I finally just want to talk about the results. I mean, we mentioned many of the results at the beginning, but there was some sort of smaller things that I think we've moved great guns on. Talk about the real play, skills practice. Like I said, you know, you often hear people go, "Oh no, we've got to do some role play. I really don't want to." We've actually moved from that to people saying, when the actors are coming, can I borrow them for sort of half an hour and brief them on a scenario I've got to go through and discuss it with them. It's quite a change. And also, we're now sort of in our next phase of moving from good to great leadership, where we are having local leadership consultations with everyone. We've just finished seeing everybody, and actually talking about what the local challenges facing them. Bear in mind, obviously, all the challenges we know about anyway, with cuts, etc., coming along. We've also seen a real positive move in Investors in People Award. We were audited again last year, and they'd noticed, as you know, they do a very, very thorough report, and they've noticed that we've shifted quite a lot from having form-filling exercises to meaningful conversations. Other things that we've noticed as well is reduced recruitment costs. Certainly the leadership role was seen as much more attractive than it was. It was seen as a way of quickly jumping up perhaps the levels and getting promotion rather than actually wanting to go into the role. But we were getting more and more people wanting to be a leader. We're seeing sort of real recognition to actually explain to people and really celebrate success and saying what their impact has been. So, as I said, we are continuing to learn from our experiences that we've had during the first sort of part of it. They're continuing to develop sort of good to great leadership. We'll be following in the next 6 months to 12 months as a starting point.
So finally, I just wanted to share some of the key learnings that I feel I've had from getting involved in this project and being able to work with Stacey and her team. One is around the psychology side of it. So we can use the psychology and the psychological models to understand the theory and talk about the theory, but I think it really comes into its own when you apply it to every stage of the process. So of course, how you conduct the training needs analysis, but also how you engage in the project management, how you engage with all of the different stakeholders, right from the support team all the way up to the senior team. And also, what we try to do, I was saying our organisation puts that relationship with the client at the heart of what we do, how we supported the OD&L team in managing a change within their organisation that was really quite challenging for them. So that was around the psychology. The other thing that I've found really useful, and I continue to develop, is how we use language when we talk about these different models with different audiences. So we heard about the strength psychology before, and we've used some strength psychology areas in some of the work that we've did. But if we talk to our scientists and analysts about the happiness they can achieve and the amazing life-changing experiences they could have, we disengage them straight away. So a key thing that I have learned is how do I take that description in that textbook that's written for the HR environment and then reword it and describe it in a way that's more systematic, that's more logical and more analytical, that still delivers the same message but appeals to that audience. In working with Stacey, I've developed those skills. I think that's central to change. We can design content till we're blue in the face, but that will be it. And I'll close on that point. Thank you. Any questions?